All right, guys, we are live, and just a reminder, make sure everybody's muted when you're not speaking. And Army Corps, you are good to go.
All right. Well, thank you. Thanks for having us, and we are glad to participate. And we'll do the best we can to make sure that someone from the Corps is in attendance as you all go forward with the meetings. But definitely appreciate the invite to be a part of the effort, and appreciate what you all are doing to get things moving again with the commission. So glad to be here. Also on the line is Bob Kiesler, the Chief of Programs and Project Management at the Corps. So I'll let him say hello too, just so everybody knows who the Corps folks are that are online.
Good evening. My name is Brennan says Bob Kiesler. I've been working with the Corps for a good bit. Know many of you by name and face. Look forward to working with this and help issues in the future. All these shallow draft inlets are important to us, and particularly the ones that deal with strategic harbors and harbor refuge and the North Carolina Ferry Division. They've always been good partners with us, and we'll do what we can to help you. So, Brennan, go right ahead.
All right. So, pretty sure everybody's familiar with the navigation mission. This slide just highlights the federally authorized channels in the area. Justin already mentioned Rawlinson Channel. That's the Hatteras to Hatteras Inlet Gorge, and then Rawlinson Channel out into the Sound. Then on the other side of Ocracoke is Silver Lake Harbor. You all are familiar with these stretches of channel: Silver Lake Harbor, Teach's Hole, and Bigfoot Slough. Then Ocracoke Inlet and Wallace Channel on the other side of the inlet. You all are familiar with this area, so it's just kind of the listing of the federally authorized projects in the area. So this is a map of just kind of shows all the different channels in the Rawlinson and Hatteras Inlet complex area. This blue is the federally authorized channel. This is the old route. We typically now we only maintain, we're only able to maintain this portion through here. We accept funds from the county through an agreement to do additional work over here on the other side of the South Ferry Channel. As Justin mentioned, there's been some recent discussion and consideration of reauthorizing the federal channel, which the authorization, I don't know the exact wording, but it's been up for interpretation for a long time. Sorry, my son is yelling in the background. The authorization, the Corps has been looking at that, and there's been debate on how to interpret the authorization. It says, Bob, I'm not sure, what does it say, direct route? It doesn't say best water or deep water. It says something about the direct route from.
It says direct route to the gorge of the inlet, and
yeah.
So what you can see on that map, we've been debating that internally for 10 years, and I think in some ways the request from Dare County through the headquarters is got a little play. We've been requesting that and working that for 10 years. I think one thing to point out, and I'm pointing out something that everybody on this call already knows. Brendan, if you'll highlight the 2006 island footprint, so that green line, that shows how much the island has eroded in past times. So in recent years, I say recent years, last 3 to 5 years, when we've put a pipeline dredge to dredge the federal channel to the gorge, now that the island has eroded back so much, it shows in faster than not just our government plant, but also contract dredges. Cottrell about lost a dredge there 4 or 5 years ago. I can't remember off the top of my head, but the ferry division has been using the horseshoe path, and now what we're going to call it officially the North Carolina Ferry Route for several years now. And I believe the discussions from locals and discussions from the Wilmington district is finally got somebody that understands that the direct route by boat, the direct route that can be maintained and stayed open is no longer the route that has been historically. It's now all the way around and back around. So that's been something we've been working a long time.
Breaking up.
I'll go ahead, Brandon. I'm just saying, you had the right top. So we've been battling this issue with authorization and direct route. So this new this process allows us to go through and look for a better way to get permission, keep things open, and we'll be working that now. So Brandon, you're going to talk about that, so I'll let you go.
Yeah. So I guess an important point of clarification that Bob was touching on at the end. So I think it has not been authorized yet that is the new route or that is the realignment. But what's happened is that our division office has said that they've agreed that the interpretation is such that it's possible that we could make that become the new route. And so it's going to be a process. The steps in the process involve, kind of laying out, documenting the economic benefit, which is not hard to do in this case, getting letters of support from the Coast Guard and from NOAA, and then also we would be required to update all of our NEPA documents, so all of our environmental clearances, and that's really the big part of this. Something to mention on that point is that hopefully, the county already has clearance here, so hopefully we'll be able to, Dare County already has clearances for the South Ferry Channel portion of the route. So we'll be able to hopefully use a lot of the information they use for their permit process. DOT has been looking at permitting the Sloop Slough portion that Shoals in. So then really, we'll have to look at the other areas, but what I'm saying is we're hoping to be able to use some of the existing data and work that's been done, try to get dredging clearances through the route that's being used now, and incorporate that and make that the authorized federal route so that we can maintain it. And I think I have a slide in here with the proposed route that Justin mentioned early on that cuts a couple corners and saves some time, and we can discuss that when we get to it. But is there any questions about this slide or anything we talked about with this process so far?
Yeah, if you don't mind, I have a couple of questions. This is Tom Paul.
Yeah.
One is the dredging that's had to go on to keep this what we refer to as the long route, to keep that open. Where has that dredging occurred? Is it typically in the South Ferry Channel area?
So the only dredging that the Corps has done in the long route is over in here in the bend in our federal channel, and then in the South Ferry Channel. I don't think that anybody has permission or environmental permits to do any dredging in the rest of the route.
Is there a need to do dredging in the rest of the route?
Yeah, I think Brittany and some other folks might be able to let me know if I'm pointing to the right area. It's up in this corner of Slough.
Yes.
Okay. This is historically a big problem area, and at one point, the Coast Guard was having a hard time because they were using this route and they were having a hard time there, and fishermen, and this has been a problem area.
This is Cat Hill with the ferry. We have sorry, my dog is barking. It's clear to get through and we're not bumping bottom, but it's very narrow so that we're not able to have two ferries pass by at the same time. So we'll have to have one slow down, let them make that corner turn, and then allow the other ferry to pass by. We were working with all the agencies to get the authorization to dredge in that area, but we're also kind of waiting to see if the Corps is going to do that too. So we're, I don't know if we're still working on it. I would have to check with Lance, but I know that once we heard that the Corps was looking at a realignment, we kind of paused a little bit on that.
Yeah, Catherine, I think that's my understanding too, from what I've heard from Lance and Roger in some of their communication. And so I think maybe I might reach out to you offline to talk about what the ferry division had done to date to make sure we're incorporating all that and getting it over to our environmental folks to try to make that process as efficient as we can and easy as we can with the agencies, and what kind of things they were asking you all about. And what, I know the archaeological survey was a big piece of it.
I think that was our last holdup. So just, myself or Lance Winslow, we can help you. And as you're working with your folks with the Army Corps for some economic impact, you can just reach out to us and we'll help you get whatever you need.
Okay.
And my second question is, what can a Hyde County Waterways Commission do to assist in this effort?
Bob, do you know anything that would help in the process at this point? I mean, maybe, I think maybe in some of the economic justification, or just, the support of the county and the commission wouldn't hurt. Can't think of anything specific in terms of an ask that we would have at this right now, but
I would say right now, Brendan, the one thing that we can ask them, we have to go through a process to get permission to alter the route, and they have to go through the economics and show interest. So we'll be asking, I'm sure we'll be asking anybody that has the Coast Guard, the Ferry Division, adjacent counties, if they would like write letters of support that the reasons why it's good, just to have it in the package to show it's just not Roger Bullock wanting to change the route. So I think we'll reach out and ask for help, and probably ask for letters of support, and that's something we'll be asking for the next couple of weeks or so. But I don't see anything else other than that we would need this time.
That's actually what I had in mind when I asked the question, and we would be very happy to do that, both as Hyde County and as the Ocracoke Waterways Commission.
Great, thank you, sir.
Thanks, Tom. This is Justin. Scott, Chelsea, or Morty, before I have a couple questions, but I wanted to open it up to other commissioners before I asked a couple questions. If anybody has questions, chime in. If not, I will jump on here with a couple of my own questions.
I have one that I hope is not redundant. I mean, that last conversation was about the long route, right? Have we given up on the historic route? That old history, is it historic now?
My understanding is that from an operational dredging standpoint, we can't get a pipeline dredge in there to maintain it, and so
it's not jurisdictional so much. It's just engineeringly not possible, or whatever the word is. It's not jurisdictional.
If it was feasible and we could put a dredge in there and it would stay, I think we still technically have the authorization right now without it being changed to do that. But I just don't. Yeah.
Scott, with the caveat that I'm not a hydrologist or an engineer in any way, shape, or form, my understanding is that in the absence of somehow rebuilding the southern tip of Hatteras, even
that makes sense. Yeah.
Dredge spoils, you just can't rebuild that short route as much as I would love to.
Sure. I mean, obviously, the water is flowing right through there. So.
Yeah. So, but I do think, Scott, your question does really cue in on, for me, what is the most pivotal question for Ocracoke, and that is there a way to seize this opportunity of a redesignation of the federally authorized route to to something that resembles the current ferry route, is there some kind of opportunity there to shave that magical 10 minutes and get the ferry? We're never going to get back to 35 or 40, but if we could get down to 50, my understanding, and Kat can clarify if needed, but my understanding from Jed over the years is that creates a maximum number of runs during our peak season opportunity. And as you sort of look at the deep water section of the current ferry route, the horseshoe route, whatever we want to refer to as, it would seem that there might be some opportunities to cut a corner here or there, maybe more than one corner. And also, of course, the question is from the what is currently labeled in light blue along the backside of Hatteras, if there's an opportunity to cut out to Barney Slough somewhere there. Again, from Ocracoke's perspective, it's not just about access to the ocean, it's about how long the ferry ride is. And if we can get that down to that magical 50 minutes, it maximizes the ferry route's capabilities to get our visitors to the island. And if I'm clarifying that incorrectly somehow, I'll ask Kat or anybody else to state it more clearly. But to me, the Ocracoke Waterways Commission, the Hyde County Waterways Commission's willingness to endorse this redesignation of the federal channel, it's not that we would oppose it if you can't shorten the route, but being able to shorten the route would certainly strongly incentivize our endorsement of it, for lack of a better term.
So I think to that point, the language in the new authorization needs to be such so that, like, if something shifts, we don't want to have a new authorization that says that this exact fixed horseshoe is what the authorization is, because we know that this is a very dynamic area. So it seems to, I don't know without, talking and looking into what the process allows, but it seems like, there may be some room to, in terms of how we designate the channel. And, if what you're proposing is in line with the whole purpose of the realignment and there's no serious environmental concerns, it seems like something that we could at least consider. I don't want to say at all one way or another right now, but I think, it certainly makes sense to be considering that. And we don't want to end up in another situation where we have a route or an authorization that allows us to maintain a route that's not realistic or doesn't make sense, engineering wise.
Yeah, Brandon, I apologize for being nitpicky, but I just want to clarify some language because I think it does have really big procedural implications. A reauthorization of the federal channel would require you guys to go back to Congress and get an amendment to WIRDA. That's different than a redesignation that uses the current authorization, right?
This is, I think the correct terminology is a realignment.
Okay, but not something that would have to go to Congress.
No, something can be approved at our division level.
Thank you for clarifying.
And that was essentially the good news that everybody heard about. Was what that was just that this decision could be made by our division, and we don't think it needs to go to Congress. It wasn't that a decision had been made yet or anything like that.
Gotcha. Thank you for clarifying. The only other question I had was in terms of the NEPA process, would this, to try and be consistent with our language, this realignment or redesignation, would it require a full-blown EIS or just an EA?
We're planning and scoping it as an EA, and considering that South Ferry Channel has been dredged, and depending on what's in the area resource-wise, I'm pretty sure we're anticipating that an EA is sufficient.
That's great to hear. It's obviously a much more streamlined process. So,
yeah.
Thank you for that. I don't have any additional questions. I don't know if any of our other commissioners do, or if you were going to carry on into some of our.
Yeah.
related inlets and channels.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Can I just ask for clarification on how is that realignment, how is that decision actually made within the Army Corps?
So I think that there's some language and some policy that talks about efficiencies or economics or efficiencies that are, not, I don't know the exact language. Bob might be able to know a little bit better. I think in some sense, I think I've heard it referred to as like a nip and tuck rule, where if it's, close enough to what's really there, but it's going to be efficient and better served, better use of federal resources, things like that. I don't know the exact language or process, but I just know that if it's close enough, or if it's within similar scope, and the benefits are going to be such, that you can go that way rather than having to do a whole new reauthorization with the whole feasibility study and go back to Congress and all that.
Hey, Brandon, this is Bob Kieser again. So we go through what we call a realignment approval process, and like Brandon was saying, if it was drastically different and we were going, way deeper or much bigger, that would get us into a reauthorization that would have to go up with a study. This is a case where we're given permission to justify a case that is, we're trying to get from point A to point B in a similar manner. The authorization originally talked about following deep water in the most direct route. So we follow deep water to try to minimize dredging. So right now we don't have a route that even allows us to provide a path to the gorge. So we'll go through and justify that with, cost benefits and, life and safety and all the things that we can do. So before you write your letters of support, we'll make sure that we give you some buzzwords to make sure that you put in your letters. But it goes to division. Based on that, our division commander in SAD, our South Atlantic Division, has authority to approve or ask questions and have us make edits. But once we have approval for that, then we have permission to start the EA process. So our hot item here in the next, next month is to get that generated and submitted to division for approval.
Perfect. Thank you. That answers my question. It's always good to know who to address a letter to. So
this is a similar figure, just shows the, our channels down on the other end of Ocracoke. I know that Bigfoot Slough, I think it's right in here, is where that shoal is coming in to the channel, and there's been some groundings, and the larger class ferries are having issues. And this year we've put the MERRITT, our sidecast MERRITT, in there twice. We had limited federal funds to help out, but we used the funds we had, and then we also reprogrammed funds from another project to try to help out at least, and we dredged a little bit outside of our channel and followed the good water to try to help out there. But I know that is an issue, and there's probably some discussion on that, but I'll open it up on these channels, this slide, for any discussion about these.
Hey, Brandon, this is Justin. There's been some talk on the island, and I am not an expert at all on this, about the relative benefits of 9-foot versus Bigfoot. And my understanding is that the federally authorized channel is specific enough to Bigfoot that it's not possible to do something like we're talking about doing up in Hatteras Inlet, where you could move the federal channel over to 9-foot. That would actually require probably a congressional amendment to WRDA. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's fair, because we had to go through a big we had to like go through basically an emergency declaration and get special clearances to go just slightly outside of the.
I froze up on this end. Is everybody else frozen?
I can hear you.
Yeah, we're gonna.
Can you all hear me?
I can.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
It's just Bob. Bob, if you're stuck, then you can come out of the meeting and come back in, and it should let you.
So,
Thanks.
yeah, I think that's a fair statement, a correct statement. What you said is that it's not, it wouldn't be a slight realignment there, and that we've had to go through a lot just to get right outside of the channel there to use the MERRITT.
So absent congressional action, it sounds more negative than I mean it to be. We're stuck with Bigfoot.
Yeah, and I think we've had a lot of interest in letters and communication on this one, and I think Roger, our chief of navigation, and Christine Raymond, I think they've kind of communicated back that the MERRITT is good and helpful, when it can be, but some longer term fix would be, getting a pipeline contract in there, getting a pipeline dredge in there, which obviously is a significant amount more funding. And then also, I know historically they put sandbags on the tip of this island, which kind of, because I think there's some thought that this island is eroding and a lot of that sand is getting back into the channel there. And so the state funded this in the past, and I think that kind of a solution that's been proposed, or not a solution, but mitigation measure, let's say, has been proposed by the Corps and Roger and folks, is that trying to stabilize this island to some extent, and then getting a pipeline dredge in here to really clean it out, and then maintain it with the MERRITT as we can was kind of the best we could do.
But that's all. I mean, sandbagging, what we on Ocracoke call is bird crap. I'll be polite. Bird crap island. I don't know if it has any other name, but I mean, obviously sandbagging that and getting a pipeline dredge is all contingent upon funds.
Yep. Understood. Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
It's been some years since I had a conversation with a couple of guys from the Army Corps, and they either were engineers or surveyors, I forget which. And I guess it's too late, but they suggested that dredge island actually is on the wrong side. In hindsight, it should have been on the south side of the channel, which might make some sense since it's the north winds that probably blow the sand back into the channel. Anything to that, or is that just?
Sounds like it makes sense, but I don't know any of the. I don't know.
Probably not much we can do about it now, anyway.
That's something to consider. That's something to consider, Brandon, when we go through and talk with the resource agencies about sandbags. If that's what the path forward would be in the future, we could also talk about possibly moving the island to the other side. That's something we could always address. I'm sure it would require some additional, environmental coordination, but in the long run, if that makes sense, that's something we can always put on our list to consider.
Yeah. So Bob, so the sponsor, the non-federal sponsor for this project is the state, or is that correct? And they're responsible for providing the disposal location?
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Brandon. I apologize for putting you on the spot, Kat, but I assume that if the state is the non-federal partner and dredge spoil sites, it's what they really mean is the Ferry Division, right?
That's what I would think, and that's okay. So, and we'll get to this in my presentation. We are hoping to get some dredging done in that channel, Bigfoot Slough, with the help of Hyde County. So thank you guys and Carteret. As far as long, yep. So, and then as far as long term, there, I'm trying to find out if we would qualify for a Federal Lands Access Program grant. And if we do qualify, so the grant would allow us to maybe do some dredging or maybe get these sandbags replaced because it would increase access to a federal land property, aka Ocracoke. I'm doing some digging right now and checking with the powers that be to make sure that we do qualify or find out if we qualify at all. And then I would approach you and I would approach the Waterways and Hyde County and the Army Corps to get some solid numbers and support. It's not done, obviously. I'm still trying to do my homework and make sure it's something that can be done, but it is something that we're looking into.
Thank you, Kat. That's great. Yeah, I'm sure we would be more than happy to send letters of support for something like that. Whether it's with regard to this, our Ocracoke Inlet challenges or our Hatteras Inlet challenges. I talked with Jed a little bit today, and he indicated that to the extent that you can make your grant application there vague enough to be applicable to any dredging challenges, you're going to try to do that.
I'm making it vague but specific, yes.
Kat, is the first kind of effort you talked about with dredging with Port of Hyde County and Carteret County, is that like planned through the state? Are you guys going to be dredging that through like on your own?
You'll be dredging it.
Okay, well, that's the question I was asking. I didn't know if it was planned to come through the existing long-term MOA, or if it was through the separate shallow draft grant thing.
I know that Hyde County has submitted I believe they've submitted the application to the shallow draft program. And then the Army Corps would come in and do the dredging, what I have heard with the MERRITT.
I think, Kat, that it's actually Carteret County is supplied to the fund for the dredging.
Right, but Hyde has made the application.
Yeah, and then they're going to pay for it, but then the reimbursement would come, and Hyde County will advocate for Carteret to be reimbursed for the cost associated with it.
That's correct.
Because Kevin Hart is the contact there, and I know that he has the application. And I was just wondering what the plan was, if it was, because I talked to him very briefly, and he didn't think that it was through the long-term MOA, but we can. It sounds like that's what you have in mind, and that's what's planned. So it had just come across his desk, so I can follow up and we can talk about that later on. But that's good news.
Thank you, Brandon. Anything more on these channels here in the Ocracoke Inlet arena, or any questions from our commission members? I want to be sensitive to people's time. And if you've got additional slides, Brandon, or additional data points you need to share, we're more than welcome to talk about them.
Yeah. So this is what you submitted to us.
It's very technical, very scientific. I understand if people don't understand it fully.
Yeah, you must be a GIS professional.
Is that a Sharpie you're using, Justin?
A very particular Sharpie, Tom, that's designed for navigation channels in particular.
Fine point. This is just a slide that kind of shows funds contributed through the long-term MOA that we were just talking about for some of the projects in the area. And then what was in the federal budget, the president's budget for 2020, and what's expected in the president's budget for 2021. So you can see there are some funds expected for Silver Lake Harbor.
Except that we're likely going to end up with a CR for you guys, continuing resolution with no plus ups or minuses for FY21 at this point, right?
I'll let Bob field that one, but I think we can express some need to get initial funds for government plant dredging, but I'll let Bob talk that one.
Could you repeat that question one more time? You broke up.
I apologize, Bob. I just, FY21 budgets are at this point kind of aspirational at best. There's very likely Congress will just pass a continuing resolution. So any line items really won't come into play. It'll be sort of more subject to the agency's discretion, right?
I think you're accurate with particularly in an election year, the odds of a CRA are almost 100%. We do have the ability to identify funding needs. And actually, we're going through a drill right now to identify funding needs that we would need in the first quarter. You know, as all of you know, the Corps is project funded, and just because it's in the president's budget now, there's no guarantee when it. There's no guarantee that it won't change, and there's also nobody can tell you when it's supposed to come out. But that being said, in the CRA, we're given an opportunity to request funds based on need. So if we had a contract that was going to be awarded in the first quarter, or a need for something like this that is highly important to an area from a life and safety situation, we would rank this as a high priority for O&M funds. I think there's a good priority. There's a good chance. I'd be shocked if we didn't get permission to get portions of this federal budget early in the fiscal year next year. So this to us, when we started hearing this discussion, Brennan has been working with our programs division to identify high use needs, and this work here would be one.
Thank you very much for that clarification.
This is just a funding history in the federal funds in the past 10 years.
Given the decline in funding that's applied to the Silver Lake channels, and looking at the previous slide for 2021, it's a slight increase, but it's not even half of what was allocated in 2019. And in 2019, we couldn't keep up with the dredging requirements in Bigfoot Slough. What do we anticipate with this low level of funding? How are we going to keep this channel open? You know, what's been happening historically is we wait till a ferry hits bottom and does tens or hundreds of $1,000s worth of damage, and then we declare an emergency and seek funding. Is this the pattern that we can expect going forward?
So Bob's been doing this longer than I have with the Corps, but my understanding is that the expectation of receiving federal funds, you know, is on the decline for all of our shallow draft projects. I think that's what the long-term MOA that allows us to take non-federal funds came into place, I think, around the start of that decline compared to what was historically received in federal funds. Bob, do you have any more to add on to that question?
No, sir. None of us can predict future federal appropriations or future state appropriations, but I would agree that the trend is not going in the right direction. I think we were all highly disappointed in 2020 for both Ralston Channel and Silver Lake Harbor. We had 2019 for Ralston that we're working to try to get disposal locations, and the state park service is working to get permission to dredge and put beach compatible sand on the beach. That's one reason we weren't able to use that. But for Silver Lake Harbor, we'd like to be in a position if we're always requesting additional funds and additional need. We work for the administration, but that doesn't mean that we don't express capability. And every time Senator Jones' staff prior and now, Congressman Jones' staff prior and now Congressman Murphy's staff call we express capability, and 2 maps that Brennan has shown you. We've talked about this. This has been a problem that's been going on for decades, and I do think the realignment will give us some way to keep Rawson Channel open. Bigfoot Slough has not been as problematic, knock on wood, as Rawson Channel when funded. And I could see in the future this might be one that we have to plan together and share the cost. But your question is a good one, and I wish I could answer it. But as far as being projecting federal funds in the future, the trend that recently has shown that shallow draft funding has been on the decline. These 2 harbors, Rawson Channel, these 2 subsistence harbors, and are the reason that we do get the funding we get. So we scream the holler and advocate for these funds as the best we can.
When we called for an evacuation just a few weeks ago, or a month ago, can you at that time, Bigfoot Slough was shoaled in such that only half of the ferries that would typically have been available to help with the evacuation were able to get to the island. So it's not just a matter of being able to transport our visitors back and forth, which is obviously critical to our economy, but it's also it's a health and safety issue, and a serious one. The timing that was required to initiate the evacuation was dramatically affected by the shoaling in Bigfoot Slough. We need to know that's going to be open as an important piece of our evacuation planning for hurricanes.
Thank you.
Hey, Justin, the rest of these slides, I know we've taken a good amount of time here, so the rest of these slides are just about the vessels and the different rates. So maybe you probably are interested in the rates, but I'm pretty sure everybody's familiar with our plant, government plant, different dredges we have.
Brandon, I appreciate that. I think you're right. We've covered sort of the critical issues, and we really appreciate this presentation. But for the sake of all participants, and particularly some of the other federal agencies that are with us, federal and state agencies that are with us, we really, really appreciate you guys giving us this update. I think this really helps inform us as a commission about sort of the lay of the land, as it were, or the lay of the water, and gives us a level playing field of information for all of us as Ocracoke Waterways Commission members to work together. We look forward to working with you guys. We really do want to be a partner. It's my hope as chairman, and I'm sure I speak on my other commission members, that we want to make your life better, not worse. We know you've got limited resources. You've got challenges that you'd love to dredge every channel to its maximum depth and maximum width all day long if you could. But we and we know we're not the only challenge you've got in your quiver. So we really appreciate the time, the thought, and input into this presentation. And we just are hopeful and look forward to having a dialogue with you guys as we go forward.
Thank you.
I got one more question. This is Bob Keiser, and I just popped up, and this is why it's good to attend these meetings. In years, as we go into a new fiscal year, and the funding may change, and we may get funds from a storm supplemental, we may get funds from a work plan, but when we have an idea of what funds we have for a particular year, we should be able to tell all the stakeholders what we plan to do with the funds. So if it's so many cycles, so many days of government plant dredging, or if our attempt is to attack shoals with a contract. I know we'd all like to keep the ferry channels open
Indeed.
all year round, but The point that y'all just made about hurricane season and evacuation routes, I don't think we need to talk about right now today, but maybe we talk internally in the Corps and get back as a group and talk about, is there a priority of times that are can't miss for the channels versus times when it's very important? So I guess what I'm saying, I'd hate for us to spend our money. I hate for us to spend our money during a time when evacuation is not a requirement, but then when you really need it, the shoals are there, and because of money, we can't help you. So I don't know if that's. It's kind of like I'm asking you, which one of your kids do you love the most? You love them all.
Understood.
But I think one thing that maybe Brendan, maybe we could do to help the non-federal sponsors is we have a plan at the beginning of every year, what we're planning, what the funds we have and what we're planning to do with it. And so Brendan, as quarterly meetings, talks that, but maybe outside of those quarterly meetings that we have with the state is have discussions with the stakeholders and say, this is the plan. And as the year goes on, if we get more funds, that plan could adjust, but allow non-federal sponsors an opportunity, if they have the ability, to provide funds or state provide funds, to work together. So hey Brent, I'll just take a task for you and I and the team back in the district to be able to document with the funds we have what we're planning to do and when, so that it's clear to a group like this today to understand what we're doing before we go into the year.
Thanks, Bob.
Yeah, thank you.
Bob.
Appreciate that comment. Thank you.
Yeah, indeed. Thank you guys very much for joining us this evening. I think we'll jump over to the Coast Guard and their aids to navigation folks. Apologize that we took a little more time than we wanted there. Important issues for us, so we appreciate you hanging on and joining us this evening. Let's pivot to that if we could.
Can everybody hear me okay?
I can.
Okay. Sounds good. Good evening. Thank you for the invite to participate in the Waterways group. I'm Ryan Ager. I'm the Aids to Navigation officer in charge at Wanchese, or officer in charge of the Aids to Navigation team in Wanchese. Sorry. So what I usually do, a couple other Waterways meetings that we attend, and I kind of just give a breakdown of the work that's been done in the area for the past month or since the last meeting was. So just for context, we service all the aids to navigation from the state line, Virginia state line, and Ocracoke is our southern boundary. So Teach's Hole, Bigfoot, and 9-foot channels are the farthest southern boundary of our area of responsibility. That area is divided. So when you come in from the ocean and come into Teach's Hole, starting with buoy 20 and 19, that's where my unit takes over, and everything seaward of that is the Coast Guard cutter Smilax. So they would work the ocean buoys, and we work the inland buoys. Just in the past month here, I've been down to Ocracoke once in the past month and a half. Over the past couple months, we've made a couple 3 trips. We started with a plan once the entrance was showing that there was a viable channel. We started establishing some additional aids in that area. So we put a number 20 and a number 19 out there that were already existent, but we moved them further to the south to align with what the natural channel that was there. At the end of the spit there at the beach, we were starting to see it extending out to the south, and since that time, it's kind of consumed that channel and shifted the channel even further. The cutter Smilax was out there last week or the week before. They went to do some work out there. They were going to do some realignment of the ocean aids, and we're not able to get out there based on the available depth of water in that channel off the end of the spit. So as it stands currently, the group of aids that are out there at the end of the spit, buoy 19, 21, 20, and 20 alpha, we released a shoaling message. Basically, it's a notice to mariners that the aids may not be reliable based on the availability of the depth of water there and the shifting shoal. So part of that project for the Smilax to be out there was to just basically scout that out. So we have plans in the near future to be back out there. We've requested a new survey from the Army Corps of Engineers, and once we have that, that'll be basically the key ingredient for us to get out there and put those buoys on station to best mark the available water out there. The cutter Smilax was reporting depths of less than 6 feet last time they were out there. We were seeing similar depths with that the last time we were out there. And as you get out past the end of the spit, the depth of water significantly drops off. It drops off to 20 plus feet out into the ocean channel. Smilax, their list is to service buoys 1 and 2, change the lighting characteristics on number 3. Buoy 4 is a discrepancy, and then they were going to look at repositioning red buoy number 8, as it doesn't create a good line between 8 would be the closest red aid to the entrance near the spit, and in between buoy 8 and buoy 20, there's actually a sandbar in between those 2 red aids, which would be misleading to the mariner. So kind of the reason for the haste with getting down there and getting that done as soon as we possibly can. Some past work that we've done here, starting at that Bigfoot number 10 Charlie, that was the big area that was brought up with the Ferry division and the shoaling in that area. We've been out there several times over the past 6 months and repositioned aids on both sides of the channel all through there to mark the best available water for the navigation of the ferries. We'll continue to be ready to do that as needed, and in the event that any dredging takes place there, or when that does take place, we'll be prepared to adjust the aids to navigation in that area as well. Some aids that have recently been serviced or serviced, set, or moved in that area. As I mentioned before, we established a new 20 alpha right off the edge of the spit there. We have replaced a buoy 26 that was missing. We moved buoy number 25 into better water. It was in a bad shoal there on the green side heading out. We've done numerous inspections on the fixed aids, which includes replacing day boards or replacing lights that were extinguished. And we have a project pending in that area for, it was light number 30. There's a shoal in that area. It's the day boards and the light have been removed from the pile. And one of the things on the list for the cutter was to remove that piling, and we've replaced that with a buoy. That's been replaced for well over a year now. But yeah, that's kind of the rundown for the Coast Guard. Our capabilities in relation to Ocracoke, some of the challenges that we face with getting down there is the logistics and the time involved in being down there. We really have to plan our runs down there and have a really good idea. I have one contact down in Ocracoke that seems to feed me the most information, but being in a group like this, I think is extremely beneficial. It gives us a little bit better idea of what's going on down there. I probably hear the least from the of all the areas. The least I hear is from Ocracoke, so it's beneficial to be part of a meeting like this and part of a group that will allow us a little bit more communication and aid in planning to be able to serve our customers a little bit better down there. So I appreciate the time and invitation again. Thank you.
Yeah, Ryan, we can't thank you enough. We know that you're obviously working with limited resources and obviously doing the best you can. And if our community's not communicating to you about aids to navigation that have moved or drifted or are in the right place, but the sands aren't in the right place anymore. We get it. We really appreciate your guys' work. We just wanted mostly to make sure that we have a community of people here who, are out in the water every day, of course. It's not me particularly, but I obviously talk with a lot of those guys and gals regularly. And we want to make sure that we, not to put work on your desk, but to communicate effectively to you so that you can fulfill your mission. We just want to make sure that we understand what best to do that, whether that's going directly to you, whether there's a portal or a communications channel that's the most appropriate. We just want to make sure that we're getting to you guys so that you, within your resources, have the ability to respond to inaccurate aids to navigation.
Right. I would say the best way to inform the Coast Guard of any discrepant aid to navigation is you can call our unit, and I'd be happy offline to pass any of that information on. If we have an email chain or something, put my cell phone number in there, the number to the unit, and as well as Sector North Carolina can take those reports as well, and that will get to us. And that number is public record. Go online and find that anywhere. I don't have it right in front of me, but they'll pass us that information, and then we'll be able to respond accordingly to that report as well.
Thanks, Ryan. I appreciate that. The only other question I had, and I'll ask it and then open it up to any other of our commission members, is how often are you guys out? And not a hostile question, just a question of ignorance. How often are you out surveying the accuracy of aids to navigation in, obviously generally, but in particular Ocracoke Inlet?
So every aid to navigation that we have, and we're responsible for over 600 in our area. So every single aid has a folder associated with it and has a work schedule associated with it. So depending on what type of aid it is, whether it's a fixed or a floating aid, and depending on the size of, for floating aids, for the size of the sinker and the size of the chain and the size of the buoy, there's a formula that gets plugged into that. So on average, it's every 2 to 3 years that we will revisit an aid unless we receive a discrepancy of it otherwise.
Thank you for that. Actually, I guess I do have one more follow-up question to that. Does a major storm event change that timeline at all, or only if you get a report?
No, absolutely. Anytime that there's a hurricane or a major storm event, we do a verification of all the aids to navigation. So we do that in partnership with all the stations. So in that area, Station Hatteras Inlet would send one of their boats down there, and they would verify all the aids.
Cool. Thank you, Ryan. I'd open it up to questions from other commissioners, or if I could put Ryan on the spot, if the Corps maybe has any questions for you. Hearing none, Ryan, I want to thank you for your time, and appreciate both you and the Corps joining us this evening very much. I think with the help from Donnie on our sort of IT control panel side, we'll figure out if we can load up a pre-recorded Ferry division presentation. And any and all of our federal partners are more than welcome to stay on for that. But I also realize it's 7:30 quarter to 8 at this point in an evening. So if you need to jump off, we understand that as well. Thank you all.
Can I add one more thing? I'm sorry, I was given the number to the command center for Sector North Carolina. That number is 910-343-3880. And like I said, they can take the report of any discrepant aid to navigation, and that will get to us.
Thank you very much.
All right, Justin, I'll get that video loaded up in just a second and get it going for you.
And Justin, I'm on the line. I know Jed recorded this earlier today. but I'll be on the line to answer any questions afterwards or during and take some notes if you guys have follow-up requests for additional data or anything.
You don't want to run running commentary like a golf game?
I definitely can. So.
I'll just add that he is speaking throughout this, and I can hit pause. So if you guys want me to, just scream at me. I'll pause, and you guys can discuss it. But otherwise, I'll let it run through.
Thanks, Donnie.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Jed Dixon. I'm the Deputy Director for the North Carolina Ferry Division. I'm sorry I can't be there in person tonight, but thank you to Donnie Shoemate with Hyde County for setting this up, and we're able to make this recording. I'm going to present to you an overview of the Ferry Division, and this presentation is for the Ocracoke Waterways Commission. The mission of the Ferry Division is to connect people, products, and places safely and efficiently with a customer focus, accountability, and environmental sensitivity to enhance the economy and vitality of North Carolina. The ferry system is an economic engine for the coast of North Carolina, and it provides jobs. It also is a huge provides huge economic output for commerce and tourism. And the big takeaway from that is that $735.2 million can be contributed to statewide economic output for the Ferry Division. It also creates 5,860 jobs, direct, indirect, or induced for North Carolina. This slide is an overview of the ferry system. As many of you probably know, the North Carolina Ferry Division is the second largest state-owned ferry system in the U.S. In 2020, fiscal year 2020, we had 1,065,136 passengers and about 507,071 vehicles. We have 7 scheduled routes across the coast of North Carolina and 1 emergency route. We have 21 ferries, and we also have a fleet of support tugs and barges. We have 4 tugs, 3 barges, and 1 crane barge, and then the state dredge mania. We have 13 terminals, and we have our own state-operated shipyard here in Mans Harbor, North Carolina. And in addition, we have 3 field maintenance shops. Those are repair shops. We have 1 at Hatteras, 1 at Cherry Branch, and 1 in Cedar Island. This slide shows a snapshot of the fleet age of the different ferries and support vessels that we operate. As you can see, most of the boats we operate were built in the early 1990s and through 2000. We have built some vessels since 2010. We've got the Sea Level and Swan Quarter. Those are the large Sound Class ferries. They're represented in red on the slide. And we have also built the motor vessel Rodanthe, and that's built in 2019, and we're in the process of building 2 new river class vessels, the motor vessel Salvo and the motor vessel Avon, and we anticipate taking delivery of those vessels next year. We're going to talk a lot about dredging tonight, and we're going to talk a little bit about the federal versus state channels and the designation for each, and who has authorization for what channels. Excuse me. Dredging waterways and the channels used by the North Carolina ferry system is necessary to ensure safe passage of the vessels, reduce the risk of damage from vessels running aground, and provide emergency services to locations such as Ocracoke Island. They are 13 channels that the state maintains with the dredge mania, and those are all the way from the northeast up in CURRITUCK down to Southport. So we're responsible for 13 ferry channels, and our dredge season runs about 4.5 to 5 months, and that's primarily based on the environmental permits and when we're allowed to do the dredging activities. We do our own dredging with the appropriations that's made available to us each year. So how much dredging activities we have is solely based on the funding we have for that year. The federal channels, the federal channels are maintained by the Army Corps of Engineers. They are responsible for the shallow draft projects. The shallow draft projects are those projects that are in less than 20 foot of water, and that includes 10 inlets and 14 inland waterways. It also includes some of our ferry routes, the Hatteras Inlet ferry route in Rollins Channel. It also includes the entrance to Ocracoke, which is Bigfoot Slough, and it also includes our emergency ferry route in Stumpy Point. This slide represents the dredging plan that we operate for the state channels that the Dredge Manio is responsible for dredging. Both the state and federal have a survey team that can conduct the hydrographic surveys of each channel. The state does theirs with a location and surveys unit, and the Army Corps has a survey team that they use to do the dredging, the surveying of the channels as well. This is an important part of maintaining the channels, is being able to keep an eye on the channels and getting current surveys to see when dredging is necessary. So with the state channels, the DOT uses the location and surveys unit, and the Corps has their own surveys team. We can produce surveys similar to what the Army Corps does. You guys have seen them. We actually have a few in this survey to reference that shows the channels and areas as the different depths are represented, and we'll take a look at some of those as we go through the presentation. The Ferry Division plans dredging year to year, and that's based on the budgeted amount for that year that we have available. This slide shows a 20-year plan on how we plan to dredge into the future, and it also takes into account how much money each of those projects will cost. The dredge plans tracks projects and future projects, and it also tracks money that we receive from any storm supplemental dredging that's required to do that. So that's what this spreadsheet represents, and you can see it's planned out through this year. This is the amount we've done through 2020. This next slide shows a 5, 10, and 15-year estimated cost by location. The blue is the 5-year, the red is the 10-year, and the green is the 15-year plan. And the left side shows the amount, with the very top approaching 18 million and going down to 2 million. You could see overwhelmingly for the cost of the Ferry Division, the largest cost for us is maintaining South Dock, with a 5-year cost of over $4 million, a 10-year cost of over $10 million, and then a 15-year cost approaching $18 million, around $17 million. So it's a significant cost to the state of North Carolina to maintain South Dock, and I've also got some slides that talks about some of the infrastructure projects that the Ferry Division has worked with DOT on around South Dock and the basin there. A little information about the ferry channels for us as operators. An ideal channel for us would be 12 foot deep and about 100 foot wide. And that's like the minimum we need to safely run both the Hatteras class and river class vessels and also the Sound class vessels. The Sound class vessels draft up to 7 feet. The river class vessels draft around 5 feet, and the Hatteras class vessels draft just over 4 feet. So a 12 foot deep channel would allow us to run all 3 classes of vessels in that. And 100 foot wide would be a pretty tight channel. The vessels themselves are around 42 feet wide, so that it doesn't give us a lot of extra room, but we can safely operate with a 100 foot wide channel. Little bit of geographic reference here. Of course, you guys know that Bigfoot Slough is the approach channel into Ocracoke, and you can see where that is on this map. The Swamp Quarter Terminal, of course, is across the Pamlico Sound in Hyde County, and then the Cedar Island Terminal is over in Carteret County to the southwest. You can see that. A little bit of information about Bigfoot's Salute Channel. It's under the Army Corps of Engineers authorization, and as you guys are aware, it's required constant dredging for the last several years. In March of 2020, the Corps did a sidecast dredging operation there and expended all the funds they had left for this physical year. That in turn was just a Band-Aid type approach, and it was used to dredge MERRITT, and it got us into the season, and it allowed us to operate until the channel did fill in around the end of July. We are currently operating 2 vessels, and there are the smaller Sound class vessels. We're running the Carteret and the Silver Lake right now. Those are our 2 smaller Sound class boats. The Sea Level and Swan Quarter are the 2 newer Sound class boats. They draw a little bit more water. Those boats we were anticipating running this summer, but because of shoaling, we're not able to run those. They're a little bit deeper draft, and it's just not safe to run those boats. We damaged the Swan Quarter earlier in the year, and we're unable to run those boats because of the deeper draft. We have 2 cost options the Corps provided us. It would cost to dredge the channel to a 12-foot depth. That cost was $535,332. That, of course, would be an ideal depth for us to run the Sea Level and Swan Quarter. And it would, in addition to the other 2 ferries we're running, and the 10-foot depth was the cost of that was $251,666. And we worked closely with the Hyde County and as well as the Carteret County to work together to provide the matching funds for the shallow draft program, which is going to provide 75% of the cost of this dredging. Carteret County is going to supply the matching funds, which is 25% of the cost of the dredging that will be able to execute this dredging sometime probably in mid to end of September is when the Corps is going to be able to get there with a MERRITT and do this dredging for Hyde County. So it was a big effort and a lot of cooperation and partnership between Hyde County and Carteret County, as well as some of the state officials that were able to make this happen.
Donnie, can you pause for a second?
A lot of
So, thank you, Donnie. I just, if we've got some Army, it looks like we still have some Army Corps folks with us. Going from 10 feet to 12 feet doubles the cost? What's driving that?
So I don't have the estimate right in front of me, but it's just the amount of quantity in the dredge box. I mean, it's like a simple calculation on what the operator thinks the rate is, what the captain thinks the production rate is, and then you take the quantity, and then that amount of quantity at 2 depths. It's just
fair point. Sorry, you just made it clear for me because you're not going from 0 to 10 feet and then to 12 feet. You're going from 9 feet to 10 feet and then to 12. Well, understood. Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks, Donnie.
A lot of cooperation and partnership between Hyde County and Carteret County, as well as some of the state officials that were able to make this happen. A lot of information about federal dredging and maintenance funding for the different routes we operate in. Funding for Bigfoot Salute has really been all over the board, as you can see represented in this graph. Been as low as $200,000 a year to as high as $1.4 million, and it's the big takeaway from this is it's been very inconsistent, which hasn't allowed maintenance dredging. It's just been more reactionary. So it's been one of those things where when the problem it gets to be severe, it's created a big challenge to be able to provide the money to do the dredging necessary to keep the channel open. These numbers also includes hurricane supplementals. The federal government does get some supplemental funding for hurricanes, and that's what you're seeing here and why the big spikes in the allocations. It also those numbers include the federal allocation for dredging. So you can see it's all over the board and depends on the fiscal year of how much funding is available for that project. In addition to funding, plant availability can also be an issue. The Army Corps of Engineers works out of the Wilmington office in North Carolina, and they provide dredging vessels that are deployed anywhere from Maine to Texas. So in addition to funding, having those dredges available in North Carolina can be a challenge at times. So that's just a little bit about Army Corps of Engineers and how their maintenance and funding works. A little bit of information about historical project cost and cubic yard removed. You can see on the left side of this slide, it shows the number of cubic yards removed from Bigfoot Slough Channel, and it also shows the cost on the right-hand side. So you can see the cost of the project. That's the cost is represented in the red lines, and the blue bar graph represents the cubic yards for each physical year. Starting in 11, you can see that the dredging was less than 50,000 cubic yards at a cost of less than $20,000 for that fiscal year, and you can see how it's been all over the board. In 13, there was a Corps contractor who came in and did a dredge job. 70,000 cubic yards was removed from Bigfoot Slough at a cost just under $120,000. And you can also see throughout the year the different costs and how much cubic yards have been removed. The last major dredge project was done in 2018. That was done by a contractor, and just under 100,000 cubic yards were removed from the channel at a cost just under $1 million. This slide shows a picture of one of our sound class boats. I believe this was the Sea Level that ran aground in July and damaged the prop that you can see here. This is a significant cost for the ferry division to replace this prop and put a new one on and do our realignment and replace the shaft. This cost alone was around $25,000 that we aren't budgeted for. That comes right out of our operations and maintenance appropriations. So that's why we had to shut down the operations with the Sea Level and Swan Quarter. We just don't have the adequate water to run those larger vessels with the state of the channel right now. This, again, had put us on a 2-vessel schedule that we're currently on, and we had to cancel those departures, and we've been on this 2-boat schedule for most of the summer. We did get down to a 1-boat schedule for a short period of time when the Cedar Island had to come into the shipyard. This slide just shows the different schedules that we have run. Our typical schedule, our historical schedule for the summertime would be a 4-boat schedule on the Sound. That allows from 5 departures from each side between Cedar Island and Ocracoke, and 4 departures on each side from Swan Quarter and Ocracoke. And that would be our normal 4-boat schedule. But we started the season due to COVID-19 and lack of ridership with a 2-boat schedule. And that just, we had 2 departures from each side between Cedar Island and Ocracoke, and 2 departures each side between Swan Quarter and Ocracoke. And that was the schedule we ran up to when we had to go down to the 1-boat schedule, which was done in sometime in July, and that was due to showing in Bigfoot Slough, which we couldn't run the Sea Level or the Swan Quarter, and the motor vessel Cedar Island had to then go into shipyard period. The Cedar Island was one of the boats that was able to run the channel, and due to the showing, we weren't able to run the 2 vessels we had planned on running. If we'd had the appropriate water depth, we'd have been able to maintain the schedule that we had advertised. The 3-boat schedule is our typical schedule that we run in the off-season that allows for 3 departures from Cedar Island and Ocracoke on each side, and 3 departures from Swan Quarter and Ocracoke on each side. And this is just a little bit of history about when we started the 2-boat schedule and when we had to go to the 1-boat schedule. As I mentioned before, the 2-boat schedule has departure times from Cedar Island at 10:30 and 4:30, and departure times leaving Ocracoke for Cedar Island at 7:30 and 1, Swan Quarter to Ocracoke 10 and 4:30, Ocracoke to Swan Quarter 7 and 1:30. We were able to run that schedule for most of the summer, except for when we had to go down to the 1-boat schedule, and that was due to the shoaling in the channel. And those departure times were 7:30 from Ocracoke to Cedar Island to Ocracoke 10:30, Ocracoke to Swan Quarter 1:30, and Swan Quarter to Ocracoke 4:30. We were able to resume the 2-boat schedule on August 16th, so we went through about a 10-day period, 11-day period where we were just on the 1-boat schedule because of the shoaling and not being able to run the sea level or the Swan Quarter. We'll talk a little bit about South Dock and the sustainability of the terminal there and the efforts the DOT has made to shore up the facility there. An engineering firm has developed recommendations to slow the erosion rate, but the project has been put on indefinitely due to funding challenges in the DOT now. We have been able to shore up our basin, and we have done that, a sheet pile project, and we're just finishing that up now. That project is represented in this slide and shows the bulkhead area that's been repaired and put back into service. And from the inlet hazard area on, there's a sandbag project that's ongoing, and we anticipate the sandbag project to be complete by the end of September, and it'll also include the building of the dunes and planting of sea oats to more stabilize that area. But the sheet pile project is complete, and that has been a huge ongoing project to help shore up our basin at South Dock. But as all of you know, this area is a real challenge, and it remains very susceptible to shoaling and to erosion on this corner of the island as well as other parts of NC12. These are slides that shows the area before and after repair. You can see the bulkhead being built, and then the slide on the right-hand side shows the repair area complete now. We anticipate that the dunes and the sandbag portion of this project to be complete by the end of September. A little bit of information about our shipyard. Justin asked that I talk a little bit about our shipyard schedule and some of the staffing. And these are just numbers that we typically use. And our workforce numbers here, prior to 1998, we had 100 positions at our shipyard, and those were responsible for maintaining just a portion of the fleet. Now we have to maintain all 21 of our vessels through Coast Guard inspection, and we're doing that with now about 61 employees. Over the years, we have lost those positions to legislative reductions, and we are doing a lot more with a lot less than we previously done. And some of the challenges that we have, or some of the positions, are very difficult to fill. We have 2 marine mechanics, 3 marine welders, 1 marine painter, and 1 marine sander that are vacant positions now we're actively trying to fill. And also, in addition to that, we have some hard positions that require much more background, and it also requires an engineer an engineer 2 and 3 positions, And those positions we've posted several times and not gotten the qualified applicants to fill those positions. So some of the upper level positions have been proven to be very difficult to fill, and we continue to try to fill those vacancies that we currently have. A little bit about the shipyard schedule. All of the 21 ferries have to come in twice every 5 years for accredited dry dock. So that averages between 6 and 8 ferries have to go through our shipyard each year, and they are required by the Coast Guard to do those scheduled dry docks. We have 2-year and a 3-year cycle they come in on. So around every 2 to 3 years, each of the ferries have to come in for work, and that work requires about in between 8,500 and 12,500 hours, man hours each year to complete the entire scope of work that has to be done. As I mentioned before, prior to 1998, we had 100 employees that were doing the work there, and they were only having to do those dry docks for 11 of the 22 ferries. Now all 21 ferries are required to go through the Coast Guard dry dock. That mandate in about 2008 changed that. So all of the ferries in North Carolina are currently having to go through the Coast Guard inspection and dry dock, and we're doing it with 60 employees. And in 1998, we were doing it with around 100 employees. This slide shows our shipyard schedule out to 2022. You can see there are planned dry docks for each of the ferries based on the amount of work that has to be done. We try to do between 6 and 8 ferries each year, and that does not include the emergency haul-outs so that are the red E's on the screen. The emergency haul-outs, that happens when a ferry gets aground and we damage the prop. So we have a repair that requires the boat to come into the yard. We average around 12 of those a year, and that emergency haul-out comes right out of our operations and maintenance budget. Okay. Good evening. My name is Jed Dixon. I'm the Deputy Director for the North Carolina Ferry Division. I'm sorry I can't be there in person tonight, but thank you to Donnie Shoemate with High Schedule for most of the summer, except for when we had to go down to a repair that requires the boat to come into the yard. We average around 12 of those a year, and that emergency haul-out comes right out of our operations and maintenance budget as well. So when we damage a ferry, it has to be brought in and repaired, and then it's put back into operation. And those unscheduled emergency haul-outs has a impact on our scheduled work as well. So that takes us away from the scheduled work to do the emergency haul-outs. New vessel construction. You can kind of see the ongoing work that we have. We are very fortunate to have some vessel construction going on at this time. We have the motor vessel Ocracoke Express, where we are still waiting to finish that project up. In addition to that, we have the Avon and Salvo. Those are the 2 new river class vessels. That work is about 50% complete, and we do anticipate having both of those vessels in 2021. Those are being built down in Louisiana now. In addition to that, we have some new support vessels. We have the tug Wanchese, which will replace our tug Albemarle. That is nearing completion, and that's being built down at Metal Shark Boats down in Bayou La Batre, Alabama. And we have several other small tugs that you can see listed, and those are very near completion, and we anticipate having those in the coming months. Those will be barged up to North Carolina, and they'll replace some of our smaller tugs that we use as part of our dredge operations as well. Some information about the ferry vessel replacement funds. The General Assembly appropriated $4 million annually to go into a capital reserve account for new vessel construction. In 2016, that started, and you can see in 2020 we'll have $20 million in that account. That money will be used to pay for the construction of the Avon and the Salvo. that money is a little over $22 million. So when that work's completed, that project will be funded solely through the Ferry Replacement Fund, and that's currently accruing within the Ferry Division Capital Reserve account, and it's $4 million a year, and that money is strictly used for new vessel construction. In addition to that, toll revenue can be used for new vessel construction, or a vessel can compete in STI for funding, and that's how the Rodanthe was funded. That was the bomb replacement, and that project competed and scored in STI, and we're able to build that vessel to replace the motor vessel bomb, which will come offline in 2021. Talked a little bit about STI funding. They also funded the construction of the tugs. That was funded through Divisions 1, 2, and 3 in NCDOT, and that basically paid for the construction cost of all the support vessels and the 70-foot tug that will replace the Albemarle, which is now the tug Wanchese. We anticipate that all of those tugs to be finished by the end of this year. A little bit of information about a passenger ferry. We were fortunate enough to be able to bring the passenger ferry back. We started that service on July 3rd this year, and we're going to run it through September 10th. Due to COVID-19, we reduced the capacity on that passenger ferry from 149 to 96. That allowed more space for social distancing on board, and we also allowed time between trips for cleanings to just disinfect the vessel and to try to do everything we can to prevent the spread of COVID-19. We're running the same schedule that we did last year. The fares are $5 one way, $10 for a round trip, and free for those under 3 years old. $1 for a bike one way, $2 round trip. So far to date, from July 3rd through August 29th, we carried 6,293 passengers. And when purchasing a round trip ticket, you're counted twice, once going over and once returning, and 480 bicycles in addition to that. During this time period, we were also suspended ops from July 31st through August 5th due to Hurricane Isaias, and that's we were down for about 6 days due to the hurricane there. But another pretty good year for the passenger ferry. Our numbers were a little down from last year, as to be expected due to COVID-19, but overall, our ridership was strong again this year. A little bit of information about our dorms in Ocracoke. As all of you know, our dorm was damaged in Hurricane Dorian, and we are the dorm has been cleaned out all the way down to bare studs, and we anticipate letting the contract to rebuild the dorms by the end of the year, and we're going to allow the contractor 6 months to complete the job. So we hope to let the contract January 1st, and we hope to be in the dorms by 6 months after the contract is let. So we're in the temporary camper trailers now with my staff. They're there on the island, and we look forward to being able to let this contract and get the dorms repaired and back operational so we can move our crews out of the camper trailers. Really, that's all I have for you guys. Again, I'm sorry I can't be there in person for you guys tonight. I would be glad to come back in person in another meeting to take these to talk about it some more and talk to you about dredging and our shipyard and some of the challenges that we're facing with funding. Thank you, Donnie, for setting this up, and thank you, Justin, for arranging this meeting. I look forward to times where we can get back together in person, and I'll wrap my presentation up. Thank you.
And that's it, Justin. I'll turn it back over to you.
Great. Thanks, Donnie, for making that work. Just for all of our participants, we recognize that the PowerPoint resolution was a little low, so I've got his entire presentation now. Kat sent it to me by email, so I'll make sure I forward that out to all participants in an email, so you have it for additional review or for your records as you'd like. Kat, I've already texted Jed our appreciation for his participation indirectly. I know you're still with us. I've got a couple questions, but I'll turn it over to any of our other commissioners and our federal partners who may have any questions for you, Kat, before I have a couple questions as well.
Okay.
Floor is open.
I like this group.
Well, I'll jump in then, Kat. A couple questions I have for you. Jed's presentation mentioned something about, this is with reference to South Dock in particular, and the ability, or the effort to stabilize what is the north end of Ocracoke Island, which you all call South Dock appropriately. He mentioned something about the ability, the request to try and put some groins out, which, as I understood, we're all going to be inland, for lack of a better term, of the coastal area, the no hardened structures on the coast. It sounded like from Jed's presentation that those groins were maybe now off the table. I just wanted to get some clarification on that from you, if I could.
I will follow up, of course, and get you a definite answer. As far as I know, the answer to that is that they are an option, but due to funding and then the possibility of this inlet hazard area line being removed, we could look at a different option, such as maybe a more sheet piling or a different structure that would go further down the line instead of just the groins. Funding is our biggest challenge there. We haven't taken it completely off the table. We're waiting to see what happens with this inlet hazard area line.
So could you clarify on that a little bit? Is the movement of the inlet hazard area line a good thing or a bad thing for us?
I think it would be a good thing. It gives us more options to do some, I don't want to say hardening, but let's call it reinforcement further past the stacking lane. So you're not just stopping halfway at the stacking lane line. You're able to do it a little bit further down to get you more protection.
Awesome. Okay. I appreciate that. Thank you, Kat. The other big question could you clarify for us, or at least for me, other people may already know the difference, but river class, Hatteras class, Sound class. I mean, obviously, Sound class are the big ferries that run from Ocracoke to the mainland, but on the Hatteras route, are there both river class and Hatteras class?
Yes.
Okay, and then, so what are the implications of the long run or the current ferry route and the likely route in the future for those two different classes of vessels?
I don't think there's any.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
So right now, so we do have both the Hatteras class and the river class from Hatteras to Ocracoke. Sound class, just like it sounds, it is servicing Ocracoke. So the river class are larger vessels, and the fact that they can carry more vehicles and have a bit more capacity, but for passengers. But as far as implications, the size, the width is still the same. There's not an issue there. It's a little bit different. I don't want to say it's the same, and someone quote me on that. It's a little bit different, but either one of those classes are able to run that route. Both of them have to kind of stop and wait their turn to get through sloops, that little corner. But with dredging on the sides, it would allow for them to pass through. As we go through the vessel replacement projects and get new vessels funded through STI, we are slowly phasing out the Hatteras class because they are smaller. So you can only carry 30 vehicles on the Hatteras class compared to 40 to 42 on the river class. So we're slowly phasing those out.
Thank you for that clarification. How about their abilities with sea condition?
Same, there's no issues there.
They can run the same winds and same sea conditions they can run? Yes.
The only difference you will have there, I believe, is when you start comparing Sound class to river class and Hatteras class. I think, and I'm not an engineer, I'll have to clarify with one of the QA folks, but I think when you start talking about higher winds and seas, it's Hatteras and River class that don't do as well compared to a Sound class vessel.
Certainly, yeah. Certainly, I mean, the lack of a, I was going to say gate. I'm not sure that's the right term, but you know, an enclosed bow versus an open bow is a big. Yeah. Any other questions from commissioners or any of our federal partners that are still with us?
This is Scott. I have a quick question. I believe there was a sort of a notion floating around for a while about moving the south dock to the pony pens area. Where's that thought? Is it,
So
is it under consideration seriously by anybody? Or?
A little bit of an update on that one. So in order for us to do that South Dock project of us doing the construction around our terminal to harden that structure, we Division 1 was actually required by our permit, by our National Park Service permit, to look at where can you move and is it possible to move the South Dock Ferry Terminal. There was an old study done and they had to update that study. It has been updated and it is complete. I would have to refer to my leadership to say, are we considering this? Again, just like everything else, the biggest holdup is funding. But you can look at the issues of, do we move or not move? And how long is the South Dock Terminal sustainable? And that's a question that we talk about frequently. And what are our next steps for ensuring that there's actually a connection once you get from Hatteras to Ocracoke and you can go somewhere. That study is complete, like I said, and I can follow up and get you some more information on discussions that we're having internally on what to do.
Thank you, Catherine.
Justin, can I jump in on that point for
a
minute? On behalf of Dave Halleck, who I speak with regularly about a lot of these issues, and who's not here at this meeting to say this himself, but I've heard him say it often enough that I think I can safely say that if he was here, he would point out that what we're currently doing long term is just simply not sustainable. The road, putting in protection for South Dock is important. It's absolutely vital. It may be the most vital short-term thing that we're doing to try to preserve transportation to and from Ocracoke. But long-term, if you look at the highway after you get off the ferry at South Dock and you head toward the village and you go through that area, and everybody knows where I'm talking about, that is just simply not sustainable in the long run. And so the options are very definitely being considered. And I was at a meeting not long ago that involved some state and federal partners, and that conversation is active in the sense that everybody, I think, recognizes the how critical it is that we address that, and that we begin to address solutions to the problems now instead of waiting until we have a South Dock but no road between South Dock and the village. It's a really super critical issue.
Yeah, Tom, I completely agree. I mean, sea level rise, climate change induced sea level rise are real. There's no doubt that the Outer Banks are going to be changed geographically. And while things like preserving South Dock are critically important short term, a long term strategy for what Ocracoke's going to look like in 20 years, you're absolutely right. Let's not, we got to do what we got to do in the short term, but let's not pour bad money after good, or whatever the abused analogy is there. Any other questions for Kat? We're going on 2 hours here, and I really appreciate everybody's forbearance and patience, and our federal partners and Kat and Jed putting that presentation together. It was really, I think, at least for me, and I'm sure for other commission members, really helpful. I think it gives us an important baseline to move forward. I'm hoping that we can not wait 30 days for our next commission meeting, and my hope there would be to focus on any follow-ups that are appropriate out of this conversation this evening, a good, robust connection with the Dare County Waterways Commission, and also some talk about our ongoing efforts to improve the management of Silver Lake. With that sort of preview of what I hope our next meeting will be, and we'll follow up by email about when that'll occur. I would just open it up to anybody that has any additional comments or questions. I want to really thank the Army Corps and the Coast Guard and the Ferry Division from North Carolina for joining us this evening. It's been really, really helpful. But before we close out the meeting, just see if anybody has any additional questions or comments. Hearing none, I'm going to thank you all for joining us again, and we'll follow up by email. Thanks all.
Thank you, Justin.